Welcome back to Saints Squad. I'm your host, Dylan Sanders of Saints Wire, and I really try not to do the millennial pause whenever I start this show.
I'm Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, and I think the New Orleans Saints did a pretty dang good job this offseason.
John Hendricks, New Orleans.football, and I was wondering if you had some time to talk about your extended warranty on your car.
This is former Saints wide receiver Lance Moore, and while we talk about football on this show, today is the official start of NBA free agency.
Ooh.
It's the Saints Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything New Orleans Saints, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from down in the Big Easy, the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Saints Squad show, starting now.
Howdy, Houdat Nation. Welcome back to the Saints Squad, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where I am excited about a Jordan Poole and Jeremiah Fears backcourt. I mean, it's going to be the most fun thing to watch. Thank you for making us your first listen every Monday and Thursday. We have a unique group of experts here ready to bring you a fun and informative show on everything New Orleans Saints. Today, we're going to be diving into a bunch of stuff like an Alontae Taylor season preview. We're going to do a new thing where we talk about Lance Moore and he picks a play. We go all that. We're going to talk about the Saints linebackers. And then, of course, we're going to go talk a little bit about the offseason. That's where we're going to start. We're a few months out of the start of the offseason. We're just over a month away from – just under a month away from training camp started. Ross, talk to me about how you feel about this offseason. Give us some how do you feel it's gone so far?
Yeah, I think if a lot of people oftentimes when we talk about the offseason, the initial thought is, oh, what free agents did they sign and how was their draft class? But obviously this free agency this offseason goes farther back than that for New Orleans. They fired their head coach after week 9 last season, and then really everything kind of started from there. And so for me, what I like most about what the New Orleans Saints did this offseason are two things. One, they gave themselves the opportunity to change over their entire coaching staff and go in a new direction. To me, that's part of the offseason. And so when I look at the offseason, I take that into consideration. The second thing is that I think that they gave themselves some foundations for success moving forward. They invested in some young talent, some young core, and then helped to build their depth with some young players that they brought in a 9-player draft class, an 11-player undrafted free agency class, and have still maintained a lot of their kind of young cornerstones that they brought in over the course of the past few seasons as well. And so I think that for those two reasons, I think the Saints did a solid job this offseason. I don't believe in pluses and minuses for grades. So I'll just say, I think that they got a solid C, maybe a solid B after we get to see a little bit of it, no pun intended. But I do think that right now it is a little bit of like waiting to see how it all pans out. But I really like what the Saints did this offseason, started with revamping that coaching staff.
I agree. I think it's definitely okay, John. Chill. I think it is.
Got something caught. I'm like dying here. Freaking dying here, man. Anyway.
I think it's hard to really talk about it until we see something, but the vibes are pretty high so far, I think, compared to, some people striking out on Ben Johnson, not drafting Shedeur Sanders, but where all of the disaster things that happened this offseason, now we're at a point where I think it's looking good. John, are you okay?
Oh yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, I
right.
don't know. The air went down the wrong windpipe, I guess. I don't know. It's early. Who knows?
Well,
yeah, I'm good.
What did you think of this offseason? What have you thought about it so far?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd say the grade is incomplete, right? I
Sure.
mean, again, if you want to say A's or D or what, it doesn't matter. Like, again, they haven't taken a single snap. So we're not really going to know where this has fallen until we start seeing some actual football being played. But on the surface, there's a lot to like about this. And for the Saints being in this rebuild, I feel like they've done a good job embracing it to be able to essentially be able to get out from under the Derek Carr contract stuff is a huge thing. I mean, that was something that we really didn't see coming, right? Like everybody thought Derek Carr was going to end up being the quarterback this year, and it didn't happen. And so that obviously helped the Saints a little bit. You lose some key pieces in free agency, which is going to happen every year. Guys like Paulson Adebo going. I thought that, they could have potentially got him back in the mix, or Will Harris. I thought that would have been a good play to have. But again, I'm not mad at the direction that they've gone when it comes to free agency, when they come to, the draft and such. I feel like there is a lot on the surface for this team to be, quote unquote, way better than they were last year with a new coach at the helm and stuff. I mean, they won 5 games last year, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
Yeah, they get to 6. They're better off than they were last year. But I think the future is bright. And I feel like this is a point for Saints fans that even if you listen to the national media on purpose or anything like that, or the other talk shows and stuff, that there is a lot of reasons to be, or there are a lot of reasons to be excited about where the direction of this team could go. And again, this is a team of what ifs. This is a team where we just really don't know what they're going to be like. And I wouldn't expect them to be a 12-win team when it's all said and done, or a 10-win team, but I expect a more competitive team that has been building the right foundation since Kellen Moore walked into this building. The players have been excited about the new direction, and I feel like it's going to pay off sooner rather than later. And so I feel like they've done a good job adding some nice pieces. They traded for Devon Godchaux, somebody that we always forget. Everybody talks about free agency, but that was a big trade to help bolster their run defense and their just defensive line. So, and Justin Reed on the back end. I mean, these are quiet moves that nobody's really going to get excited about, but Reed was a top free agent and Godchaux is a top player. So, for them, a team that nobody wants to go to, quote unquote, again, for my earlier argument or rant, I feel like they've done a pretty good job. And now it's time for them to play real football and see where the chips land.
Yeah. Lance, they didn't draft Tyler Warren, and we've hashed that out. But overall, how are your vibes right now?
Oh, man.
Well, I mean, I think your question was what is their offseason grade, right?
Yeah.
Your question wasn't what is the grade of the 2025 New Orleans Saints, right?
Right. Yeah, good point.
That is yet to be determined. The offseason is over. So I think in grading what they've done since last season ended, I could give them a B, a solid B.
Solid.
Because, and this is the main reason. I mean, there's other reasons, but the main reason to me is their ability to finally turn the page on the past.
Yep.
Right. And both Ross and John, and even you, Dylan, have hit on the fact that they've moved off from the former regime, right? Like obviously it was Darren Rizzi, and before him it was Dennis Allen, but finally the Sean Payton 2009 New Orleans Saints life.
Lance Moore 2008.
Thank you. That too. That part of the Saints history, I guess, is now over. The book has been written on that regime of the Saints. And now, like, I'm not going to say we're starting anew because there's clearly still players on the team from the last couple of years.
Sure.
But having a new voice and new voices in that building, selling positivity, selling something different than what's been there over the last almost 20 years is an improvement in my eyes. Now, that isn't necessarily going to mean wins, but it means that wins down the line are possible now because there is something new there, something to build from. I believe that some of the offseason moves were great moves. I think a lot of the offseason moves were smart moves. The getting off of the Derek Carr contract was huge, right? And not only did we get off the contract, but we got some money back as a result of that. That is an underrated type of move, one that can benefit us big time next year. When it comes time for free agency, we'll have a little bit more money to work with. It's unfortunate that you lose guys in free agency, but guess what? All 32 teams do that. So I'm not going to harp on the guys that receive contracts elsewhere Whether they were bigger offers than what the Saints could have offered or not, that's a part of day-to-day business in the NFL of teams having to stay in a certain space as far as the salary cap goes, or realizing that you can't retain all of your players. And I think,
it's a game of attrition, right? Like, you got to be able to manage that.
It is. And I do believe that I do believe that Kellen Moore is the right guy. He seems to understand what it takes to be a head coach. Now, I mean, we won't know until week 1 and beyond if he's the right guy for the job, because he's going to be wearing more hats than just the offensive coordinator who's calling the plays, right? Like, he's going to have to be the game manager. And you know, he's been around long enough, even though he's a young guy, he's been around long enough to been around places that have had success, clearly, with the Eagles last year winning the Super Bowl. I don't think it's going to be too big for him. Like, he's been ready for this for several years now. Wasn't his first rodeo as far as interviewing for head coaching positions this offseason. So, you know, I think he's been prepared for this. I think that the roster, while I still believe has holes, and I was hoping that maybe a couple more veteran guys would have gotten signed by now. I still think they will. But I think
Keenan,
if we're just talking
to you.
Talking to you, I think the ship kind of sailed on that. But you know, we're available. You know, if he's but I do. I think you know, the draft, while it did not look sexy in the moment, and while there was some guys that I would maybe have preferred early on that didn't get selected, I think it's going to end up being a solid draft class. And couple that with the fact that these two young quarterbacks seem to be really in for a battle that I think is going to push both of them to, you know, the best possible place. You know, I got to give them a solid B.
Love that.
I think I'd fall in line with you, Lance. I think I'd give it a B, because while not every move that they made is a move I would make personally, I think that there has been a clear vision of this offseason. You got Kellen Moore. You let him get his guys in the draft. You added some smart veterans that fit the system on defense. You made a couple of trades. You got rid of Derek Carr and his contract.
I was waiting for somebody to say it that way.
Yeah, you know.
Trying to be nice.
Try to be nice. I just think that they've focused on getting smart players, smart coaches, I think smart is the key word that they have focused on for a lot of their moves this offseason. And, you know, there are a bunch of worse words you could focus on in football. So I think that because there has been a unified vision moving on, like Lance said, I think I'd have to go with a B as well.
I think the other element that I would add to that goes with what you're talking about, Dylan, is that these are Kellen Moore decisions. Like, he came in and they gave him the reins. Nobody's telling him, you have to do this, you have to do that. No one's dictating it for him. He's building that future. Sorry, John, go ahead.
No. I was going to, to piggyback off of that, it was just a minute. I was going to say, Kellen Moore, if you look at this draft class and the players he brought in, a lot of blue collar type of workers, guys that are going to come into work, high football IQ, all those types of things, guys that are going to embrace your program, and then you can build a culture around, right? Like, I just don't, I look at the players, and again, unless I'm overlooking anything, I don't see egos, right? I don't see a whole bunch of divas. I don't see a whole bunch of stuff that's like, this is going to cause dissension in the locker room, really. You know what I mean? So I think some of these additions that they've had through free agency, trading, also in the draft is only going to help this team shape the next group, right? The next couple of years for this New Orleans Saints team and what they're going to look like.
Yeah. I think that is I think that we're pretty much in agreement with this offseason. I think we like it so far. We want to see the results, obviously, but it's been solid so far.
Yeah, I like it. I'll say one more thing about the draft class too. 3 team captains, 5 post-game award winners. All 9 players had 40 games or more of experience. 8 of them have a multi-sport background. 8 of them miss minimal playing time due to injury during their time. and then 5 of them were Senior Bowl participants, because that's always a thing that the Saints love, and everything like that. But like, you can see where the trend was for the selections, to John's point about going with guys that have that experience, that are blue collar guys. Like, several of them had more than 50 games. Like, all of them had more than 50 games of experience. All but one of them had missed multiple games in a season due to injury. I think it was more than 3 games due to injury. Like, you can see durability, experience being a big time focus. And all of that, again, has Kellen Moore written all over it, right? Like, that's just such a big piece. And all of that, too, is something that this Saints team can use going into 2025 and beyond.
Yeah. Well, coming up next, we're going to have a little bit of fun and go over some Sean Payton play calling and how that, could maybe work into the upcoming season. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal Kai Harley, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Don't put yourself into cap space issues like the Saints front office did. They needed the Kai Harley, the Monarch Money, to get out of it, and a Derek Carr. But it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. And jumping back into it, we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to go a Lance Moore play of the day. And we're going to go, Lance, bring us through a Sean Payton play call that was in that playbook that you think you would call for Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah. Well, we were having conversations last week about, what types of things that we think would bring Rashid Shaheed's, game to the next level. And one thing that we all kind of hit on is like him being a playmaker with the ball in space. And I said, hey, look, one of the ways to do that is to get him the ball in the short and intermediate levels a lot more often, and catching the ball on the move. Right. It's one thing to say, okay, you're a speedster, you're a burner. We're going to throw you these bombs down the field. Go routes, post routes, things like that. Right. Double moves type things where the quarterback can drop back. A lot of times it's going to be max protection, and you're literally just launching the ball 50 plus yards down the field, and you're allowing your 4-2, 4-3 guy to run under the football and make those big plays that he's so known for, right? Like that's kind of been his niche in the Saints offense, in his first couple of years. And I'm not saying that he should not be doing that as often. Right. I am saying that he should be doing this a little more often, right? Like you can add this to his plate as far as somebody that can, make plays in space and catch the ball and get you a lot of yards after catch, right? Like he's that fast, he's that athletic and elusive. And obviously we're doing the Sean Payton thing because that was the offense that I lived in for a long time. And people are a lot of times blown away by the verbiage that's used in some of those play calls. And I don't have a terribly long one today, but I do think that just listening to the words can be interesting to people and trying to, and I'm gonna do my best to try to break it down without us obviously having a whiteboard and me drawing it up for everybody, which is next level, right? Like maybe that's something that Saints Squad can think about in the future. I can literally sit here with the whiteboard and tell you who's who. And but for now, let's go with F, right, is a position.
F,
2, meaning he's moving to fix right, sell it, stretch 38 boss, topper, F spear. Okay, so if we're breaking this down, F2 means the F is going to motion to the formation, which is fix right. And in this particular play, the F receiver is Rashid Shaheed. So
Okay.
this is an 11 personnel play, meaning there is one back, one tight end, and 3 wide receivers, right? Just for the personnel standpoint. Let's just say Brandon Cooks is the X on the outside. Chris Olave is the Z in the slot. This is to the left side, right? Because we're motioning to fixed right. So your receivers all start out on the left. Rashid Shaheed would start out in as the number 3 receiver. So the most inside receiver in a trips formation in F2 fixed right. The tight end will be in line. So on the line of scrimmage on the right side, right? So there's your picture pre-snap. The quarterback says ready. Rashid Shaheed knows, oh, I got to get the fix right. So he trots over. Now, this isn't a super fast sprint and he's like getting lined up. He just, does a little trot over there, gets lined up. But in this particular play, it's F spear. So he's running across the field. So he knows that he doesn't have to go get lined up 2 yards outside the numbers on the far right side of the field. He knows, oh, I've got a spear route. I got to line up a little bit closer. So he's probably going to be 4 to 6 yards away from the tight end, off of the ball, of course, because the tight end is already on the line of scrimmage. And something that a lot of people don't know, even when you're shifting or motioning, you always have to line up in a legal formation, which means that there has to be some person that is not an offensive lineman on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the line of scrimmage pre-snap. So while Rashid Shaheed could get to the other side, tell his tight end to get off the ball, and then he could step on the ball, that's something they could very well do, and they might actually do for blocking purposes. But since this is a sell it play, and we're trying to sell the run, and usually Rashid Shaheed on his spear is going to sell like he's going in to crack and block that safety that's going to come down and try to make the play, he's going to stay off the line of scrimmage, right? So he'll be off the line of scrimmage. The sell it part is exactly what it says. The quarterback and running back are selling the ride 38 stretch. So a stretch type play. So it's an outside run. 38, the 8 hole is the furthest to the outside. So it's out around the tight ends area, right? So the quarterback is really getting out there. He's reaching the ball. The running back is getting to a wide, super wide aiming point. It's a play that really wants to make the defense think that we're running a wide play out to the right. Now, as the defense sees that play wide out to the right, they're selling. Everybody's flowing in that direction.
Right. Yeah, they're matching the play flow.
Matching the flow of the play. Now, what happens on the topper side, topper, T-O-P, which for us, the easiest part to remember there is 2 posts. 2 posts. Topper.
Okay.
Topper means 2 posts. So you have Chris Olave, who's in the slot, who's going to take the innermost deep secondary defender and run through his inside shoulder. So in a single high defense, right? Hopefully that strong safety is coming down to try to play the run. He's running through the inside shoulder of that near safety, right? So if it's a single high safety, only one safety, he's running through the inside shoulder of that safety. If it's a 2 high safety defense, he's going to keep it a lot skinnier and run through the inside of that safety, right? Then obviously the outside receiver, which is Brandon Cooks here, the super blazer burner, still in his 30s. He is running his tail off to be the outside post guy. Now, against the cover 2 defense, usually he could keep his post on, but a lot of times they're going to want him to outside release and just kind of run as wide and as fast as he can. Why?
Sure.
Because that cover 2 safety is going to have some width to him, and they're going to have to create some space for the inside posts, right? So they have to stay away from each other. They can't be running on top of each other. So with all of those defenders on the backside kind of out of place, now Rashid Shaheed can navigate his way across. Oh, I'm selling. I'm going to block the safety. No, I'm not. I'm going around him. I'm going above the linebackers so that they don't see me and try to grab me. And, so I'm going above the linebackers and I'm going to kind of flatten it off 16 or so yards across the field. And usually there's a wide open space for him to be able to catch the ball and take off and run with it.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work out that he's open, but in the sell it family, that play is almost always there. Like for him to be able to catch it on the move and make a play. Now, if it is cover 2 and that cornerback shows some kind of discipline, he's generally settling around, 10, 12 yards when all is said and done, after he's trying to get his hands on the receiver that's supposed to be running a post, but he turns it into a go route outside of him. The quarterback's got to feel those two safeties after he comes out of his cell. Okay, now I know I can't throw Rashid all the way over there past the numbers. I got to get it to him a little bit earlier so that he can catch it and look and see that corner is still kind of hanging there. If the cornerback continues to get depth because there is no threat in front of him, a lot of times in shot plays, there is a shorter receiver that allows the defense to see something in front of them to be like, oh, I got to go get that. And then they hit the play over the top of him. But this isn't one of those plays. So that gives Rashid the opportunity to kind of feel what's out there in front of him and kind of throttle down a little bit and be able to catch the ball, before he gets, or maybe even just after he gets to the hash, not even before he gets to the hash, but a little bit after the hash, in between the hash and numbers, keeps him safe. And I think this would be a great type of play. And we've clearly got the personnel, 2 speedsters on the backside, being able to clear everything out. And then another speedster being able to kind of feel his way over across the field and catch the ball in space. I mean, I think this would be a great play. And I would imagine it might not be run with the same action in the backfield. It might not be called the same thing, but I feel like every offense that I've played in the NFL has had a topper spear-like concept. And I would imagine Kellen Moore would have something like this because it's not the hardest type of play for a young quarterback to be able to read.
Yeah, Ross, I was gonna ask you, like, do you think that this is something that the Saints could run, like a version of a play that the Saints could run this year?
I actually would give the answer that they have the better personnel this year than they did last year to run that play, unless Mason Tipton wouldn't have had that injury during training camp last year. Because maybe Mason Tipton would have been the only other one that you look at from a personnel and speed component that you say, okay, go and run a post that's timed well over the top of Chris Olave or run that route that's going to get you towards the outside. So I think they've got 2 players that would be able to do this from either a speed or a route running sort of finesse perspective. Brandon Cooks is obviously one of those guys, as Lance mentioned. I would put Dante Pettis as a possibility in there too, just because he understands the leverage on the outside. So like you were talking about, Lance, where maybe if you can't get the post over the top, then maybe you just angle out or flare out, I think is what you said, and then try to create that space. I think he has a good natural feel for doing those things, but even without a little bit of the speed. But I think that the Saints now are more equipped to run a play like that this year than they might have been last year, thanks to the addition of Brandon Cooks specifically.
John, what do you think about the versatility or the personnel that the Saints have right now in terms of being able to create more of these types of plays?
Yeah, I do believe it. I think obviously starts up front. I like the offensive line components. Again, the Kelvin Banks, I guess, protection. Obviously, those plays can break down pretty quickly. And obviously, it depends on the defense that you're going up against. But, I'm curious to see, or I will ask as a follow-up after this is, when would you use a play like this potentially? Lance, would be a follow-up question for you. But I do believe so. I like the trio of Shaheed. I like with Olave and Cooks, you know what I mean? And then, of course, if it's other interchangeable receivers, I think they have the personnel to do this. And I could see Tyler Shuck being able to do this. I could see Spencer Rattler being able to pull this off. And so I feel like this is a play that, again, could find some success. I'm just curious, again, follow up. Where would you try to run this play? Like, is this a play you run just kind of as a base, or do you need a shot play? Do you need it as I'm trying to make something happen down the field, Lance?
Yeah, I mean, I think you would run it on earlier downs, right? Like
Mhm.
you want to run this play when the team thinks you're going to run the football, right? So you're not running this play on 3rd and 15. Like that's
Right.
not that's
Oh
not a
man, I
play
think
that
we've seen this though.
well, probably.
Past few years, I
And,
think we've seen that.
and I think it's got versatility because it can win against several different defenses. Like you might think like, you don't really want to run that play against man-to-man coverage, but it could easily win against man-to-man coverage, and you actually probably have more options against man-to-man coverage because if it's the single high defense and the number 2 guy Olave does his job of taking that safety, now you've got Cooks on the outside on the big post, and you've also got Rashid Shaheed coming across on his spear route. Like that gives you 2 big play capabilities. Oh, and by the way, it's man-to-man, so everybody's back is turned. So if Rashid beats his corner and he catches that ball on the move, it could be a touchdown. You know, so sure, you'd love to run this play against zone coverage where he can just navigate his way over into a wide open space. But it is a play that can win against man-to-man. You don't really want to run it in a 2-man situation, which usually happens in 3rd down scenarios. You also don't want to run this play in the tighter red zone area because there's just not enough space, right? So you need to be in the field at, minimum, 40-yard line and out. But I do think that this play could be run more often than not, just based on situational football.
There was a moment.
The one thing that I will say though, also for a young quarterback, there's not a lot of outlets on this play. Because remember, your tight end is in blocking and selling, but which, he could block, and potentially leak out late. And the running back is kind of going out to the sideline as well. Like there's not really much that he could do if those big throws aren't open other than kind of throw it away or tuck and run. But in more times than not, I believe that, the spear would be open and potentially one or both of those post routes could potentially, because in my time, all 3 of those guys got those balls. Like we've hit that inside post clear on the other numbers before, just based on how the defense plays. I remember Devery catching some of those. I've caught some of those ended up catching those on the front side, being the inside post guy. So there's definitely options associated with it, and it's definitely a play that could be run most of the time, but also not all of the time.
Yeah. Love that. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. That was great. It feels like the earliest I've been in school for a while because I was not scheduling morning classes at LSU. Coming up next, we are gonna be jumping into the defensive side of the ball, and if we think that the Saints have the linebacker room to compete this season. We've talked a lot about how we like what they've added to the linebacker room. We've liked, Demario Davis. We've said some nice things about Pete Werner. Not that many, actually, but some. So I want to talk about
Pete gets the short of the stick a lot. Not just from us. I think all around. It's I think it's one of the downsides of being the jack of all trades type and master of none type. Like very good at a lot of things, but not elite at anything. Just part of how it goes.
Yeah. But I want to talk about whether or not, because this is, I think, even though it's a two-man linebacker room, I think the linebacker is going to be super important this offseason, at least off ball, and on ball in this defense. But I'm talking specifically off ball, like Demario Davis, Danny Simpson, all of them. They're gonna have a huge job. You're gonna have a huge job because of a young secondary or a young cornerback room, some thinner or question marks on the edge rusher, stuff like that. Do you think that this is a good enough linebacker room to carry or be the heart of the defense? John, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, you got Demario Davis playing there, and I feel good about that. I think the variables are, what is Pete Werner's availability like? How much of an impact does a new linebacker coach and Peter Sermon make, right? And of course, I think our favorite right now would be Danny Stutzman to kind of come in and play a little bit more. I think that's obviously something that we're waiting to see here, right?
I think you see Lance shift in his chair.
Yeah,
immediately.
exactly.
That's
I
my
was like,
guy.
Danny Stutzman, you know what I mean? Hold on a minute. Hey. But again, I think it's a reality because we've talked about it in training camp that's approaching that DeMario is going to get some veteran rest days. Who's the guy that's going to step up? Is it an Nephi Sewell? Is it a DeMarco Jackson? You know, is Jalen Ford going to take on more of a role? But, you know, I think Danny Stutzman, the way that they have brought him in, and, you know, you still got guys like Isaiah Stallbird that could play linebacker, safety, you know, again, guys that it's just not really like household names outside of Demario Davis. And I mean, you know, Pete Werner, I think, has the capability. He's just got to stay on the field. I mean, I think that's most all of the big problems with some of the Saints is availability. And of course, we can't predict the future there. And things look good last year for them. But at the same time, I think they have a good nucleus here. But if DeMario's not in the picture, I'm a lot concerned, right? And I guess that's the way I would put it out is if he's not in the picture, then are they a world-class heart of the defense? No, I don't think so. I think that they have potential to become that, but with no DeMario in the picture, then this answer is simply no. But again, I think DeMario has a lot of great football left in him. You know, I would be surprised if this is his last year. I think he can play beyond this year, but it just depends on what his role is going to be carved out in this new, you know, 3-4 defense, or when they go to nickel and play the 2-down lineman, or whatever the case may be. I think he could be better and more efficient in getting after the quarterback. I think that he will have a distinct role in the run support and getting after the quarterback. And maybe you leave Pete Werner to be more that guy that plays a little bit more in coverage in this particular setup. But, you know, overall, the depth is something I really need to be sold on a little bit more here.
Yeah, speaking of depth, I wanted to bring it up because it's been brought up. Where do you think Jalen Ford gets an opportunity eventually in the defense? Do you think that this could be the year, or is he just going to be a special teamer again?
Yeah, I think that, you know, he was training last year at more Mike, if you will, and to kind of be that DeMario guy, and he was getting some first team reps in training camp and such. I think that's kind of his role at the moment. I feel like immediate, yes, it is special teams, but I would love to see him more in the conversation there. If I had to rank kind of the primary depth, I believe it's probably Nephi Sewell and DeMarco Jackson right behind, you know, guys like Pete Werner and Demario Davis. Not that Stutzman can't put himself into that conversation, but a Jalen Ford, you know, he had that injury last year, which is unfortunate, but he was relegated more to special teams, but they really do like him a lot in that room. He thinks the world of him. I mean, he ended up making the final roster, you know, again, it wasn't something that he just came in and did. I mean, you got to earn those spots, obviously. And so I think for Ford, it's probably more immediate, you know, Mike, but he is also learning the other positions, or was last year. And so I think that, you know, again, DeMario backup would probably be the easiest way to convey that.
Ross, where do you stand on the New Orleans Saints linebacker room?
Yeah, I like where they're at. Obviously, it's easy to like what they have at the top in DeMario and Pete, like John was saying, and like we will all say. I think that the thing that has been sort of intriguing about them going into this year are where they either allowed people to walk away or where they added people. Willie Gay now in Miami, and then you see the Saints bringing in and adding Danny Stutzman. They also added Tyreen Powell this offseason as an undrafted free agent out of Rutgers, 6'5", 250 pounds. He can play a little bit of that hybrid pass rusher / off-ball linebacker like he did at Rutgers. I'm a little bit high on him when it comes to the undrafted free agent class. I mean, and so I like some of the younger additions that they've made. I think the biggest concern becomes a lack of experience behind Demario Davis and Pete Werner. And some of it is just because Demario Davis and Pete Werner have played games. And so that has kept these guys out from being able to start games. The only player amongst the remaining group of linebackers right now with an NFL start is Nephi Sewell, and it is with a single NFL start. And so the rest of them, we're talking about, you know, a few tens of snaps in the NFL in a couple of games. And so for me, it's about, I don't question the talent so much because we don't know what the talent really is. Nephi Sewell has stood out in, you know, practice games and preseason or not practice games, sorry, but in practice and preseason games, my apologies. And then like you see him take advantage of what it is that he practice games. You see him be able to take advantage of the opportunities that he did get when he got his opportunities out on the field. But we to me, it's still that I don't know what's really behind them. And I think Danny Stutzman might be on his way to leaping a few of those guys, even though he's kind of the newest addition to the team. So I feel a little bit better with the addition of Danny Stutzman. I like the addition of Tareem Powell. I like that they continue to focus on Nephi Sewell. And then the losses of and then the losses of Anthony Orji as well as Willie Gay, I think, are based on the roles that they played in the past. Those are surmountable. Like, those are not massive gaps. You know what I mean? So I think it's a big question mark for me, but I do think that at the top of that position group, that they are one of the best tandems in the NFL when it comes to when it comes to them being on the field.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I think that, it's obviously fun to watch Mario Davis. I think that he is one of the best linebackers in the NFL still, and I think that he has what it takes to run a defense essentially in the middle. We've always talked about how we liked Danny Stutzman. I like what the potential of Nephi Sewell in this defense. So I think that I would agree with you. Like, the pieces are there. It's just going to take some guys stepping up, and that includes Pete Werner, and it honestly includes a little bit of DeMario. Like, we need DeMario to return a little bit to form in terms of like pressuring the quarterback and taking that role on. And Pete Werner, obviously, he just needs to be more than just a jack of all trades, because I feel like that hurts the defense at times. So
there's a lack of playmaking in that second level that I feel like DeMario brings as a pass rusher and all those other things, but the takeaways, the fumble, the forced fumbles, things like that. I know that those stats don't say everything. They don't tell every story and everything like that, but that is one of the things that you'd like to see a little bit more of from that second level, is a little bit more of the playmaking. And maybe they're a bit more free to do that now that you've got two stand-up edge rushers on the outside. Maybe they'll be more free to, create those opportunities. I don't know.
Yeah. It's been a lot of LSU talk of like wanting their linebackers to just, rear back and go get the quarterback. And I think that that's something that the Saints could do a lot more of this year than they did last year. Lance, what do you think about the linebacker room so far?
Well, whenever you look at, and I should say whenever I look at a position group and try to judge, what they look like as a whole, one of the things that I look at is obviously the depth. And in this group, is it necessarily a lack of depth or is it a lack of experience? I don't think the two are the same thing.
Right.
If you've got potential capable bodies and guys that can go make plays, then, the best thing that you can do for them is to get them reps in training camp, get them reps in the preseason games, and then you see what you have from there. And then if that lack of depth is something that is apparent as you get closer to the regular season, and you either make a move to trade for some depth, or you look for the, I guess, newly free agented guys that end up getting cut from other teams that you could possibly pick up to build the depth for your position group. Love DeMario Davis as a player, as a leader, but he's not young anymore, right? So what is the role that he's going to fill? Is he going to still be a 3-down linebacker, right? Is he going to be in base defenses and in nickel and dime defenses when it's clearly time for offenses to be passing the football? Is he going to be the guy that's is he going to bump up to the edge? Is he going to be one of the edge rushers in our nickel or dime defenses, right? Like, what role is he going to play? Because I don't imagine that in those passing situations that we're going to still be having a 5-down defense or a 5-fronted defense with 2 linebackers, right? If it's a 5-fronted defense, there's only going to be one actual inside linebacker on the field. And if I'm having my choice at this stage of keeping DeMario in for coverage or allowing Pete Werner to be in coverage, I'm going to have Pete Werner because he's proven that he can do that part as well. I still think DeMario has some of that in him, but I think you want to play for longevity of the season with him, and you don't want him to be on the field all the time at this late stage in his career. So I think that kind of the roles that each of those guys is going to play is going to be super duper important. And obviously their health is going to be paramount, right? Hopefully we don't have to see the other guys, but in the case that we do, I do believe that we've got some depth to be able to come in and not just, be out there, right? Like, so I think that Nephi Sewell and Danny Stutzman are capable of being linebacker 3 and 4, however you want to number them. And I would imagine in this Brandon Staley defense, they're going to have to learn both positions. I don't think there's going to be really any guys outside of maybe DeMario that's only going to play one position or have to know that one position. I'm sure DeMario will know the other position, but I don't think he'll have to play the other position in this defense.
Yeah.
I think that to close this out, I think what we really need is to shout out to one of my favorite Saints linebackers of all time, Craig Robertson. I think they need some dogs. I think that they need some dogs. And it looks like they have some. At least Danny Stutzman gives dog energy. Whether that be Pitbull or Golden Retriever, we are yet to know. Well, coming up next, we're going to stick to the defensive side of the ball and talk about one of, I think, maybe the most exciting players on this team. Wrapping us up today, we're going to go with continuing our season previews. And we're going to go with one of my favorite players to watch. I think one of the most exciting players to watch, and that's Alontae Taylor. Lance, I think you've been the biggest Alontae Taylor head on this podcast. Not that we don't like him, but I think that you've sung his praises. So let's start with you. What do you think of him heading into this year, and what do you want to see from him this year?
I want to see more of the same. I mean, I guess that's a oversimplified answer. But he adds.
It's a stark contrast to the Lance Moore breaks down a play segment.
Yeah. I was a little long-winded there.
That was very in depth. And it's like I just want to see more of the same.
More of the same. I mean, look, I want to see him first and foremost. I want to see him as the starting nickel corner, the starting slot guy.
Yeah.
I want to see him playing inside more often than not because he's very, very good, and he has the feel in there. And like being able to get after an extra guy to get after the quarterback is necessary in a defense that we don't necessarily know what we have really in a new scheme with guys maybe playing in a new position that they have not played before or in a new scheme that they're not quite as familiar with. A guy that can come off the edge for them and make plays at the quarterback is big. He was a decent guy as far as PBUs goes last year. I would like to see that uptick. And then obviously the takeaways. Like I want to see a few more takeaways from him. And it doesn't have to be interceptions only. It could be caused fumbles. It could be fumble recoveries. That to me is the next level, I think, in his game is more pressure and sacks on the quarterback and then more takeaways defensively. I think he's got it everywhere else. Like he's very sound in the run game. He's not scared to come up and make tackles. He's familiar with route spacing and concepts and kind of understanding where guys are trying to get to in zone coverage. And then he's obviously got the speed and athleticism to stick with guys in man-to-man coverage. So that's what I mean when I mean more of the same. I mean, he's been a very, very good player in that secondary in his first couple of years. And I think that he's going to continue to get better in that role. And first and second down base defense, he's going to have to be solid on the outside as well, like continue to improve in that area. I think that he's more than capable of taking that next step and becoming not just a legit slot corner in the league, but a legit corner overall in what he's going to be asked to do this season. And look at some of the, you know, the bigger named, I guess, slot DBs in this league, you know, they're making over $20 million a year. So I mean, we're talking about a guy that could be one of those guys when it's all said and done, when it's time for him to hit free agency. So like, you know, now's the time to really kind of take that next step to the next level and become one of those big time go-to guys on defense. Hey, we can count on this guy. We're going to make sure that he's in position to make plays and let him go out and do his thing.
Yeah. I think that I misspoke in one of our earlier episodes. I said that he was better on the outside than he was on the inside. I think that it is flipped, and I do think that he needs to be better on the outside this offseason. I do think that there's going to be a lot of toying around with where the defensive backs will line up. You look at the guys that they have. There are a lot of guys that can play nickel. There are a lot of guys that can play on the outside. There are a lot of guys that can do a bunch of different things. And I think that he's going to have to do it all. And I think that he is going to have to be just more trustworthy whenever the question isn't, hey, go stop them behind the line. You know, he led the team in pass breakups last year. He is a very effective player. I just think that it's more about the fine tuning the smaller things for him, because whenever he rears his head back and wants to disrupt a play, he's going to disrupt a play. And I think that is something that is very much needed in this defense. Like we were talking about the lack of the playmaking in the linebacker room. There has been a lack of playmaking at times in the secondary, but that's not a problem you have to have with Alontae Taylor, even if it isn't a guy that is going to have 5 or 6 interceptions as a defensive back. He's going to find ways to do it. And I think that for this Saints defense to be the best that it can be, he is going to have to be a guy that is near the ball a lot. Yeah.
I would completely agree with that.
Ross, what do you think about Alontae Taylor so far in his career, and what do you want to see?
Yeah, he's an incredibly disruptive player, and that's what you want for somebody that's going to line up in the slot, and specifically somebody that's going to play that Brandon Staley star position, which is a different level of disruption creation and havoc creation and all those other things. Like there's a different level of responsibility to that. That's not so entirely exclusive to what you already do as a nickel corner, that all of a sudden you're playing a brand new position and it's all crazy and everything. That's not that wild, but the responsibilities are different. You're going to be asked to do a lot of different things as Alontae Taylor this year in that role. He was rated as one of the most disruptive players through the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season last year, and had done so much during that time that by the end of the season, even after his disruptive plays dropped being moved outside, he was still one of the top 3 or 4 havoc players or disruptive players in the league by the time that was over. I'm going to borrow something that Lance said earlier about how whether or not when we talk about that linebacker core, we're talking about, is the conversation between a lack of depth or a lack of experience? I think in some cases with Alontae Taylor, the conversation has been that it is a difference of a lack of knowledge versus a lack of education. And I don't think that those two are the same thing. I think those two are vastly different. And I don't think that it's a lack of knowledge. I think it's been a lack of education, meaning that he has been in a position where he's been moved around and shifted. No, now you have to go and cover this. Now you have to go and cover this because this player is gone or that player is hurt or whatever it might be, to finally be able to focus in on a role and have the opportunity to own that role the way that he did so successfully early on last season. And he, John and I spoke to him a few times in Irvine and everything, and some of the great things that he said about all that. And I'll leave that. But like, there is so much of that kind of stuff that is going to be crucial for him going into 2025 to finally be able to do that. And I'm going to say this too. I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints try to re-sign him during training camp this season before he hits and completely goes off in that role. And I wouldn't blame him and his team from betting on themselves either. Don't get me wrong, but I think that they should try to get that contract done.
Yeah, we saw it, to use a little bit of a baseball term, a baseball analogy. We saw it with Pete Crow Armstrong this year with the Chicago Cubs. They tried to give him, a 7 years, $70 million contract earlier this year. And he turned it down. And people were like, bro, that's $70 million. You don't turn down $70 million. But then he went on and he has been an MVP candidate this year. He looks like one of the best players of all time. Like, I just think it's a case like that you brought up, Ross. It's something that could be similar to what Alontae.
Yeah, it's something Jeff Nowak over at WWL Radio talks about all the time when it comes to Alontae. Like, try to get that contract done before it starts, and like, there's value on both sides. But betting on yourself sometimes it works, like you said.
Yeah, John, what do you think of Alontae so far?
Yeah, of course. I think he's got a lot of disruption in him. I think he's got his best potential is yet to be unlocked. I think that's kind of where I'm at. And you know, it's interesting. You look back at when he was first drafted in 2022, and Ross is a good call out. This is a contract year, so I'd expect him to play kind of gangbusters. He is CB1 right now. He is the guy. There is no more Paulson. There is no more Marshawn Lattimore. He is the top corner for this team, at least on paper. I think Kool-Aid could obviously enter that conversation at some point, but he is the guy right now for the Saints team to be their top cornerback, right? And so I look at the fact that since he came in the league, he had Dennis Allen, he's had Chris Richard, he's had Joe Woods as a defensive guy. Now he has Brandon Staley and Terry Joseph. I think the biggest thing and kind of what you've hit on, Ross, is the consistency and the messaging it's really more of a coaching thing. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you go back to Alontae in the offseason talking about just use me the right way, right? Like, and it just kind of speaks to him as they're like, no, we're going to put him on the on the outside. Then they're like, no, let's just put him in the slot. And he's like, I got to learn the slot position, right? And so again, it's just kind of been where they're, I want to say mismanagement in some aspects, but they're trying to figure out ways to get him on the field and to do different things earlier in his career. But now you're in a spot where you are the guy. You're going to be used how you want to. Now it's time for you to kind of deliver on your end. And I believe between Brandon Staley and Terry Joseph, the coaching and the technique part is really going to be, you know, paramount for him and in this year. And I think he can play really well, kind of put up similar numbers, whether it's the pass breakups, getting some sacks, affecting the quarterbacks, kind of similar to what Asante Samuel was able to do under Brandon Staley in Los Angeles. And of course, we don't know if the Saints are going to add to the secondary a corner. You know, there are some really good corners out there at this moment that could potentially join this team later, but I don't think it affects where Alontae is going to be. But they need, again, you look at who they're playing. You got the Bills, the Dolphins. They've got a lot of different opponents on here. There's some big wide receiver ones that Alontae is going to have to go up against. And I mean, this is a way for him to earn his bag, so to speak. And I would love to see them get a contract done before, because if you don't, then you're either having to go to free agency again. And if you do sign somebody like a Asante Samuel or a Jair Alexander or something like that, it's only going to be a 1-year rental, right? At this point, unless you try to get something else done. But that's just kind of how it is in the NFL. And so getting him locked up sooner rather than later, so you don't necessarily have to draft somebody, would be a good thing, because Quincy Riley, I think the world of him too. But I mean, at this point, he's started injured a little bit, and now he's behind. Yeah, he's just behind, and that matters in the NFL, whether you want to agree or disagree. But I do see it all the time that it does leave him at a disadvantage. But I think Alontae has some great football in him, but he's got to be the one to do it. And look, he's somebody that keeps the bulletin board material. He keeps the stuff that people say about him. He will see it. I mean, and again, whether that's good or bad, or you're indifferent on that, but he knows what's being said about him. And I think that he's going to be able to respond in a very positive manner this season. And I can't wait to see it. I think he's going to be one of the top 3 defensive players on this team when it's all said and done.
Lance, what does playing against a guy or a defensive back that can wreck a game like Alontae do to an opposing offense?
Well, you have to plan for him. You know, if he's just a guy, then you're not really talking too much about him. But a guy like Alontae, who's multifaceted, right? He's not just a guy that's high energy and great in coverage. Like, he's a guy that is great against the run. He's a guy that's great rushing the passer. Like, so you kind of have to have a plan for somebody like that defensively, or else he will wreck what you're trying to do offensively. I mean, that is, you know, when you go into those game plan meetings early on in the week, and you're talking about personnel, obviously he's going to be one that's highlighted. Okay, this is a guy that we've got to pay attention to on every single play. Quarterback and the offensive line have to be on the same page as the receiver and tight ends, as far as if blitzing off the edge of the line of scrimmage. Like, people have to know. But I wanted to hit on something that you guys talked about, from a player's perspective. You talked about the team getting something done with him sooner.
Yeah.
Rather than later. That sounds great in theory.
Yeah,
and if somebody who doesn't know anything is listening, they would think, well, why wouldn't the team do that? The team probably is already working on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's got to work for both sides.
Yep.
It's not as simple as, hey, we're offering this guy a contract extension. He's got to accept it. Like, if it's something that is far below what he thinks he's worth, he's not accepting that contract extension. Now, this is after his third year, so he is now able to accept a contract extension. But if he accepts something now, that means he's not going to be able to hit unrestricted free agency after the season. And there is a way, obviously, they could franchise him and give him the franchise tag so that he wouldn't hit unrestricted free agency. But even that 1-year deal would be worth significantly more than I would imagine they would offer him today going into his fourth season. So I just wanted to hit on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's not a foregone conclusion if they're in negotiations that he's going to sign an extension.
Yeah. Well, and that's why also betting on himself makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, and they also have to worry about guys like Trevor Penning, which I don't know that they're really worried about that. But Chris Olave is going in a 5th-year option after the season. And so,
and
again,
Rashid Shaheed
is going to be a free agent. There's a lot of them that you're having to look at. And so, again, I'm not saying you have to pick between Olave or Alontae. And this is one of to bring it back full circle, one of the joys about getting out from under the Derek Carr contract that maybe you can get both of these, but it's going to cost you a good bit to keep some of this talent. Olave, you have a little bit more flexibility because you do have him under the 5th-year option and you have a better chance to extend him. But Alontae, if he does play, he could end up like Paulson and getting paid a good bit of money. The Saints wanted to bring back Paulson to Debo, but he got a better offer in New York, and I don't blame him for taking it.
Yeah. Well, I hear that there's another offer on the table. It's you show up every Monday and Thursday right here, and we deliver a great episode of Saints Squad. Thank you for listening to the Saints Squad today. You can check out me, Ross, Lance, and John on our socials for the latest. We'll be right back here on Thursday to talk more Saints football. And be sure to make Ross your second listen of the day. If you like him, I do.